Welcome to another edition of Dig Lead Book Club. My name's Josie Alquist. If you are just stumbling onto this video, this has been a series I have kicked off since my book came out in, it was September now, which is in this upper corner, which is Digital Leadership and Higher Education, Purposeful Social Media in a Connected World. And every week I have been bringing on different guests who are featured in the book because the real heartbeat of digital leadership is people, and real people doing the work out on campus, online, and everywhere else in between. And so I would love to know the people that are joining today. This live stream is going out to Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So again, let me know who is joining. You can say hi based on the platform in the chat. Then, of course, you can share this out with the interwebs, but this will also be recorded too in case you need to run off or, again, watch it later. So last 2 weeks, you got to see me unbox my books live, and now they are just forever stationed next to me. Sometimes I just like hold them or just look at them. I mean, it's just the one, but I have a couple copies. It's just a nice reminder that it really happened. That's my name on a book. But I promise this is not an infomercial for the book. We want you to get some substance out of this conversation, like a good book club. That also means we want some interaction. So I've got questions for my featured guests today. But if you have questions, please add those into the chat and we'll get to them as we can. So without any further ado, I'm excited to be joined today by a digital leader through and through, even if he may not call himself that. Immediately when I saw his actions in the digital space, even though we had never met, I knew he was amplifying all of these guiding principles that I was discovering about digital leadership. And that is Russell Lowery-Hart, the president of Amarillo College. And again, I'm so excited to have him on. Welcome, Russell.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to share in the conversation, and honored by the book that you've written that I think is an incredible guide for all of us in this space.
Awesome. Well, I know we had a good laugh. Oh, I hear a little bit of background in your audio background. That's just technology today, but we can always deal with that. We were joking about our temperature differences before you logged on because I turned the heat on for the first time out here in LA, which is ridiculous. You said it's 21 there, and ice and snow and all the things. So I'm sending some hopefully warmth out your way, but just getting you on the screen, I hope, warms people's feeds up. I know there's so many people who are such a fan of you and your work. And so it's cool to get to just feature a little bit of that. And again, I was a fan right away, and maybe fan is weird, but just I knew you were amplifying digital leadership without even knowing what it was. And immediately I reached out to say, hey, do you want to write the opening, the foreword? And unfortunately, I was already over word count. So my publisher was like, we don't have room for a foreword. But I mean, maybe, just in
your words were going to be more important than mine in any level. So good choice on your part.
Oh, but I still included, of course, you in the book. And so I think that's where I would love to start with today. One of your examples, you talk about how you don't separate yourself as college president or citizen or other roles that you have in your life. Because especially with social media, we hear a lot of separation and boundary designations based on platforms. But you also talk about that you are approaching your roles with heart.
Yeah.
So, can you tell us more about this heartful approach and the de-separation of being a human, a holistic leader, and then how that might show up on social media in case folks aren't connected with you?
So, my relationship with social media has been, I think, like everyone else, it's been one of evolution. But when I became president of Amarillo College, I started my presidency by just talking to students and finding out what they needed from the college that they weren't getting. And fundamentally, what they kept saying over and over and over was relationship and service. Um, and so we restructured ourselves around those concepts of relationship and caring and love. And we're committed to loving our students to success. But love is full and whole and encompasses all of you. And I think I didn't see a way that I could lead a college in love and relationship building and be authentic and saying, here's the president of Amarillo College over here, and here's Russell over here. When I'm in the role of president, I still am Russell as a person. Those two things are not inseparable. And I get the appeal of saying I've got a president account and then I got a personal account. But our students today smell insincerity and they smell corporate and they don't want any part of it. But they also smell authenticity and they're drawn to it and they yearn for it and they reflect it. And so for me, our digital space has to reflect the love that we're building in a personal, physical space. And we don't separate ourselves as individuals in the roles that we play with our students face to face. So why would we do that in our digital platform? We can't and we shouldn't, I don't think.
Well, you shared with me that I truly believe higher ed must love students to success. So, which you've already mentioned, and here we are in a time of struggle. So many students have struggled, do struggle, but now in COVID. So, how has love led your decisions? And if there's been one recently, whether it played out on social or not, that has helped impact your students?
Well, I think we've really built an intentional culture of caring at the college, and I'm really proud of it, and our data shows that it's worked. But when we started this pandemic, I looked at my colleagues, the team that's leading this college, and I said, at the end of this pandemic, we're going to know how real a culture of caring is. And when we said that, I think we thought we would know that in 2 or 3 weeks. And now we're 8 and 9 months, and we could be years. Um, I'm more convinced now that the culture of caring is even more important. And we've built personal relationships with our students, both in and outside the classroom. And our digital platform has got to be a conduit for deepening that relationship inside and outside the classroom, but through the use of technology. And I used to think that you had to build a relationship and then the technology could support it. And what we're learning is that the technology can be a conduit of trust building, of service giving, of access in ways that we never imagined before. I think we always used or thought of technology as a tack on, an add on to the work that we're doing, a tool. And now I think we've come to understand that it's a conduit for our work, not just a tool. It's the center of the work. And we can still be technologically connected and build relationships and be of service. For me, what I learned in the beginning of the pandemic, and and we talk a lot about our typical student at Amarillo College, and we call her Maria, and she's a Latinx female that's first generation, raising a kid, going to school, and working 2 part-time jobs, and she has technology challenges. So the biggest worry that I had for her when the pandemic hit is that she was going to be even more isolated and more at risk because she didn't have access to the technology or the tech skills. What we learned is she has access to the technology, just doesn't have access. She has access to this, like this phone is a part of her lived experience. Um, and it's the way that we stay connected with her. She's meeting her professors on her phone. She's talking to her counselor on her phone. She's having meetings with her advisor on her phone. So there's no reason that we can't execute other parts of our relationship on the phone. But the phone is not the sole conduit of completing assignments and writing papers and working in groups. So we kept a building open and a computer lab open so that she would have access to the tools she needed, socially distanced, wearing masks. And I moved my office to that circle desk and interfaced with our Marias every day when they came in. I'd take their temperature, I'd help them sanitize and get them connected to technology with other members of the team that had volunteered to be in the space. But here's what I learned in that process. And to get back to your point, Josie, and there is a point, I promise. In the pandemic, our students and our employees are able to execute their work. It may be difficult to access the technology. It may be difficult to have access to the broadband, but we have found a way to keep them connected to the work, to the schoolwork, to the completion. But we had to be more intentional about keeping them connected to us as people, not just as teachers and advisors and tutors. And I tried to leverage my role in the beginning of the pandemic to help our community see who Maria actually was in a pandemic. So I tried to reflect, like once a week, I would say things that I've learned from the circle desk. And it would always be trying to showcase the lives that I'd come across, the things they had taught me, the things that I'd seen. And what was most amazing about that is by talking about the students that were using this space and the challenges that they faced, is that we had other students that wanted to help solve some of the problems that our students were coming into the WEAR facing. So we had students buying other students' laptops. We had community members donating diapers. We had um, faculty members wanting to fix cars. All of that happened through our use and my use of social media, and just trying to help Maria be seen and understood and heard.
Mm. I've so many takeaways and highlights from that. And the fact that you named your most likely centered student personalizes it in a way that still doesn't discount all the other populations that you serve.
Yeah.
But sometimes when we talk so macro about our students, that almost is a dehumanization process. I saw the photos early on of you at the help desk doing selfies, like handing out that technology. And I've always, the more I've dug into community college leaders, both on social media, but just also their practices, I find so many are so centered in the community and not as a spokespiece, but of service. And maybe and I talked with Mordecai Brownlee about that. And like a girl from Wyoming, I feel like, oh, y'all are my people, even though I feel like that ethos is, I hope, being seen out into leadership on all types of campuses, that we don't need more keynote speeches from executives or perfect, like sunsets on your Instagram, like centering the work, like you said, in love and student service, in the daily grind. And then the piece about knowing Maria is on her phone. I mean, I've had students submit papers on their phone. You can tell when a paper has been written and submitted on a phone, even though your learning management system has an app. That's not how it was, so knowing what access may or may not be, and then situating services around that. Again, huge kudos to that, but I still think there's a lot of campuses that still need to address some of those basic needs. So I'm glad that you brought that up.
Well, it's one of the reasons that we personalized our student and named her Maria is she was different than the student we thought we were serving. And you can look at numbers, but numbers become, I don't know, they're not real. They're things that you can look at and distance yourself from and analyze, but every number represents a life, and we needed our data to come alive, and we needed to understand who we were actually serving, not who we thought we were serving. And so it's why we talk a lot about loving our students to success and loving the student we have, not the student we wished we had or thought we had, um, and humanizing her. And I think our digital platforms are a way that we continue to communicate with her and to listen to her, and to showcase her.
Well, and I have a very similar philosophy about our actions online, that every subscriber, like, and comment is a real person. I mean, we know there's some fake accounts and bots out there, but if they look like you, they are your Maria, if they are affiliated with your campus, then they are worth interacting and acknowledging with. And some of this stuff is so simple, from just replying back or following back. So talking about the book, everyone featured was asked at least one of the same question, which was, what is your why for leading online? And so I'm going to share yours. You said, our commitment to loving students to success means accessing them where they live, online and in social media. And we must be better at engaging them across such platforms. So you may have sent me that like a year ago, and the world has changed a bit. So what does that look like for you in action today?
It's a really good question. I think before the pandemic, it was important to engage online, and now it's not just important; it's critical. And so I think where before I would be active online and I would find time to do it, now I have to be much more intentional about it. I calendar when I'm going to look at my accounts, and I calendar. Um, like I have a town hall on Friday, so there may be things that I want to hear from students to prepare for. So if I know that I'm going to have a communication piece, I'll use some of my digital connections to frame the conversation that's coming, much more intentionally than I did before. What I would do before the pandemic, a year ago, is that I use secret shoppers a lot. I literally pay students to tell me what they think. But I would go buy lunch for someone in line and sit and say, I'll buy your lunch if you give me 10 minutes. Now I can't say I'm going to buy your lunch if you give me 10 minutes. It's not as easy as walking down the stairs or walking across a campus. We have to be much more intentional. The benefit, though, is that I have access to far more students who seem to be more comfortable communicating with me in a digitized or social media platform than they might feel in person. And so I feel like I'm getting richer data, more honest data, and more actionable data a year later.
This idea of secret shoppers is genius. And I'm sure there's still a way that we can do this in digital spaces. And I love to be able to talk about posts that you are sharing recently to kind of bring this why out a little bit more. And you're on Twitter, you're on LinkedIn and Facebook. No,
Yeah.
I think you're kind of on Instagram.
I am on Instagram, but I don't leverage that as well as I should, mainly because it's the place that my kids are at, and they don't want me on it.
That's not the first time that I've heard a child's request come up for a
Yeah,
campus leader. So that's a different parenting in the digital age is a different discussion post.
right.
Wow, that's also interesting because one of your Facebook posts is about your reflections when you were a kid, and I think it was, I don't know. I'm trying to remember when exactly I stumbled into you, but a lot of your Facebook posts, you do these prompts, these
Yeah.
reflections, and usually you're sharing a little bit of personal experience or a story, and then some kind of prompt and dialogue with just sometimes hundreds of comments of folks reflecting. So recently you shared in seventh grade, Mrs. Hamilton changed my life in response to a journal entry. Quote, it's time you realize you are more important than what others think of you. And then you asked, what's something a teacher did or said that changed your life? So I'm curious, this idea of doing prompts and like not just these showpiece celebration posts all the time that sometimes social media might be seen as. Um, when did you start to do those? Why do you continue them? For this one, what kind of responses did you get?
Um, it's such a really, I don't know if my responses are interesting to why I started doing it. They come from a really personal place. I think I've noticed on Facebook that my Facebook page, my Facebook feed had gotten more. Um, it was a dialectical poll. I had friends on either sides of these issues, and they were just talking themselves further onto their side. And I felt like I needed to use my platform to talk people into humanizing themselves and people in a social media platform and identifying places where we have commonalities. And I remember one of the prompts was a simple question like, what brings you joy? This was like a year or two ago. And I had like 500 comments from people who have varying different political perspectives that come from different parts of our country, that have different lived experiences, but they all had a unified experience in what joy was to them. And the comments that they were feeding each other, like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. And I saw the same with this post about what I learned from Mrs. Hamilton, my seventh grade English teacher, um, and the and reconnecting people to those seminal people and voices in their lives. That when we're in a moment of chaos and distress and discord, we always have these common experiences and voices that loved us despite these issues. And I just felt like it was important for me to express my own experience with Mrs. Hamilton as a prompt to get other people to reflect on the power of educators and the influence they've had, and to reconnect to something positive and in a world where we don't embrace it as much or as easily.
Mhm. Right. Again, so much heart in just a Facebook prompt. And the idea of humanizing again, and how loudly that speaks coming from a leader in higher education. I know many other community college leaders or other campuses that really look to you and your leadership and role modeling. And that's why I wanted to feature so many folks in the book so we could actually see the work being done. And again, this isn't some big like movie set that you made and you went live on Facebook. It was just a prompt and reflecting about
Yeah.
your life. And we are recording and going live a week before the election. And you've already kind of you talked about, and you're situated in Texas and I'm situated in LA, and the differences that are out there. I guess, what message would you give to those that are leading in education as, they're worried about next week, but they're trying to educate folks about voting, trying to bridge differences. Sometimes what happens though is then leaders don't post anything. They just retract
Yeah.
completely. So what have been some other things that maybe you have done or thoughts about it, even for yourself, as you think about what you might be posting in the next couple weeks?
I've really intentionally stayed away from the political side of our work, um, because it's immediately divisive. And I think what I'm trying to do is to find ways to glue us back together. Like I feel the fabric of our society is ripping at the seams, and I think that kindness and respect and dignity and love can be the thread that glues us back together. And social media is going to have to be a central part of that. It's going to be the conduit for it. It's been the conduit for discourse. And I think we as leaders can't throw up our hands and be frustrated with the misinformation or the digital debates that happen. We have to model what it's like to have honorable conversations in this medium. I know my colleagues are amazing people and they have honorable conversations on their campuses and in their classrooms and in their meeting spaces all the time. But it's got to be amplified in a social media platform for us to actually start gluing our communities back together. And I think we got to take the responsibility as leaders and as educational leaders to model what it's like to have agreeable disagreements. And I've thought a lot about this, Josie, and I mean, I'm worried about what the outcome of the election is going to be, not for the election itself, obviously I am, but for the pain and anger that's going to be received on either side of the outcome.
Mm.
And we're going to have to step into that space as leaders and love people back together rather than ignoring it and hoping someone else will do it.
Mm. As leaders, we love people back together. That's
Yeah.
powerful. Well, pandemic, crisis, serving students, and an election. No surprise, another post that I found that I also related with was about leadership and needing to rest and being tired. There's a reality, and that is humanizing as well. We are not superheroes, even though we are super, and we are heroes to probably, hopefully, some. So you posted on Twitter, me last night, I've never been this tired. I'm going to sleep a full 8 hours. I know a lot of us have that goal often. And then you write, me 5 minutes after laying down, I forget how mean I was to the person in 8th grade band camp. I should apologize, 3-hour guilt tour through my life. Me this morning, I've never been so tired. So 2 pieces of being tired, right? But also
Yeah.
you're going to storytelling and reflecting back, taking us on that journey. What advice do you have for leaders right now, especially those that are in positions of service? And I also know you lead so empathetically too. So and
Yeah.
I relate with you too, that we think we then go through these processes of our lives and unpack them when we should be sleeping. So thinking about where we are right now and what leaders might need to hear to give themselves some grace, give us some insight there.
I think the pandemic, none of us have ever experienced anything like this before. Um, and as leaders, I think we feel the weight of that every day in ways that I've never felt stress before. And it would be easy to Instagram our version of the pandemic and paint a picture of we've got it together, we're doing it, the things are fine. I think what I've heard from my own employees, just even from some of the I posted a Twitter a while back that I've never experienced a COVID tired before, where you're just so mentally and emotionally exhausted, even if not physically exhausted. And what people heard from that is permission to acknowledge that they're struggling. And I think we have got to, the more genuine we can be about our own journey through this, the more freedom we give our colleagues to seek help and to seek support and acknowledge when they're struggling as well. Um, and so for me, it's like I can't separate who I am as a person from who I am as a role. And so when I can't sleep at night because I was guilt ridden about something stupid I said in the eighth grade, that's who I am. And I know that's who other people are. And I think the more freedom we can have in genuinely sharing who we are, the more engaged people will be with us. The more corporate we are, the less engaged we'll be. And you can look at my own mediated post. You can tell which ones are corporate and about promoting the college. They get less engagement. They get more engagement because they know the rustle behind those posts. But if I'm just posting Amarillo College stuff, it doesn't mean anything unless they know who is the person behind leading it or building it or caring about it.
Right. Yeah, that genuine approach. And if you are incentivized by data, like you had mentioned, they will have more engagement. I found another through line of the book beyond social media was presenting what the future could be of leadership in higher ed and many other industries. Part of that is change. We're forced into change right now, but it's also embracing imperfection. And students don't want a perfect campus president. Like, that's not relatable because they are also quite imperfect. That doesn't leave ethics at the door or morality. But as you had shared, some of those like real moments, humanizing ways. I use the word personalization in the book to not again like get people debating about what's personal or what's professional. So I'm glad you kind
But I think in that scenario, in the world that we're emerging into, the personal and the professional are no longer separate. You don't get to live two different. You don't get to live a personal life and a professional life anymore. We're too hyper connected. We're too exposed. You can't hide certain parts of your life anymore. And then when you try to, people see it as disingenuous. And I think I would rather share who I am fully and authentically, imperfections and all, and have you know who I am, than try to sell you that I am this person that I'm not.
And there's some struggle with that too, especially when we think about being COVID tired and your team saying like they're burnout, they're stressed. So has there been anything that you are trying to model or explore for yourself as we think about wellness and mental health, but also to care and love for your team?
I think it's well, that's a really important question and probably not one with a an easy or good answer. I think people in the COVID world they need their work, their hard work and their efforts to be seen and acknowledged more than before COVID. Um, when you could just freely walk a hall and say hi to someone and thank them in passing, I think we underestimate how important those interactions are. And in a COVID world, we have to be more intentional about them. So for me, like I've bought, we've invested in celebrating our employees. I've bought a lot of money, spent a lot of money on popcorn buckets to give to employees that were on front lines and really stressful moments. We've tried to give some afternoons off. We've tried to socially gather at a ballpark and watch a movie together. We did a drive-in. It's like finding ways to acknowledge and connect have been really important. Um, and then modeling my own care. I talk a lot in my town halls and my about my own health journey, and that I play tennis every night, not in 20-degree weather. Um, that I struggle in when I eat, when I stress, I eat. I think um, I had a conversation in a town hall about my stress eating, and I've never had such response. Like the text from colleagues that were giving me tips on how they manage it, how they felt seen by it. I think the more genuine we can be, and the more receptive people will be to our support and our acknowledgement.
Hmm. Right. Those revelations that we can make those purposeful choices to reflect out. I've definitely felt from my own experience, it calls people in. They have a me too moment
Yeah.
of, or resources, common connections. So I'm not sure what y'all are looking towards for 2021 out here in California. Things are pretty much staying status quo, but that can also be difficult as now we're moving into the holidays when mentally we're programmed for celebrations and gatherings, as well as the energy then that comes for a new year for our students, but also within the academic calendar. So what is the current situation that you're planning for 2021? And as you think about celebrating your staff as well as the emotional journey of your students, have you been sorting out some things that you're thinking about to maintain that genuine approach, no matter what scenario that we're in?
Well, we're in 8-week term, so we started our second 8 weeks yesterday, and for the most part, it's tech supported. Our secret shoppers help us identify, like the minute we started talking about online learning, for a lot of our Marias, they thought, I'm not good at it, I'm not smart enough for it, and I don't have the tech skills. So our secret shoppers helped us zero in on, it's not online learning, it's just using technology to support your learning. Seems like a small language shift, but for our students, it took some fear away. So we'll be in majority tech-supported learning through the end of the academic year, and I think the reason we've made that commitment to stay in this environment is, in my community right now, we're in a COVID crisis. Um, we have higher. It's our 10th day of hospitalization rates that push 20%. Um, we're averaging adding 300 to 400 cases a day over the last 2 weeks, and it's scary. And so the best thing that we can do is to wear masks, socially distance, practice good hygiene, and we couldn't promise social distancing in our classes, so we've kept them remote with some uh, frontline programs that the governor has deemed important, and we have ways to do them face to face, but safely. We've got to model what it's like to live in a pandemic. And when we first started this process, I think we'll shut everything down, we'll let it subside. It's not subsiding, and we can't shut everything down. So I think we're having to find ways to stay open, to stay fully engaged, but also protect ourselves and our employees in the process. So um, we're going to be talking about. I'll have a town hall on Friday. I'll talk about adjusting hours so that our employees have a chance to catch their breath. We'll be talking about ways that we can provide services to students in multiple modalities. Um, but we won't be talking about shutting down. We won't be talking about restrictions. We'll be talking about more services in more ways and more effectively, just as safely as we can do it.
Something that came to me as you were kind of sharing the state out there with Texas, is you have a approach of love and I would say positivity, but it's not. There's kind of sometimes toxic positivity, both
Yeah,
on social media and through leadership, and even as the tone that shifted a little bit with you as you were sharing those updates was being honest.
yeah,
This hurts to even say, but our people deserve the truth, right? Like the care, that not everything is great, and like happy Thanksgiving. I mean, we want those things too, but here's also like this is tough times. I think
yeah.
that just speaks volumes. And again, one in this previously perfect world of what we thought higher ed leaders should be is all like put together and like three-piece suits and keynotes that those message like what we don't need those right now. No one
No.
needs that. So
Well,
yeah.
I think what we're learning is that we might not have ever really needed that. I think the lessons that we can learn is our power is revealed in our honest reflections of who we are and who we work with.
Right.
And honest reflections aren't always easy reflections, but they can always be honoring reflections. And I think in COVID, what I've hoped to exhibit with my own colleagues at Amarillo College, we're not hiding anything. We're not hiding from anything. Our town halls have been, in some cases, painful, where I've had to say, I don't know what's going to happen. And I'm used to being the person who can say, here's where we're going and how we're going to get there. And it's going to be exciting. And here are our pain points. And now I'm sitting here going, we have a lot of uncertainty. This is the journey we think we're going to take, but we have to acknowledge that something could happen at any moment that forces us in a different direction. And it's scary. But I think comfort comes when people can trust us. And COVID has only demanded that honest communication. And I don't think that we'll ever be able to go back to a corporate messaging model.
Mm, hmm. Right. Well, one positive transformation that we
Yeah.
will hopefully see unpacked. Well, I want to end with, I guess, on an uplifting, positive note. Going through your feed, I also found out that you and Amarillo College are featured in a documentary called
Yes.
Antidote, which is very exciting. It's made in response to the times we are living in. The Antidote weaves together stories of kindness, decency, and the power of community in America. And I was like, wait, are they describing Russell? Like, so can you tell us about the documentary, how you and Amarillo are featured, but also what we could learn, knowing all those things that we absolutely need right now: love, kindness, decency, and respect.
I would say, Josie, having seen it now 6 times, um, I want you to see it and I want everyone to see it. And I would say that if Amarillo College were not featured, it's an experience that speaks to what we need at this moment in our country, and it soothed my soul. And because I think it reminds us, and Connie Cooperman and John Hoffman are the directors. They're Oscar nominated and Emmy award winning directors, and they've done a really great job of reflecting the best of who we are as a country when I think we're so wired to see and to experience and to focus on the worst.
Mm.
And they found 9 stories in 9 different communities that are just exhibits of what happens what happens all over our country, where communities are just committed to caring for each other and taking care of each other and loving on each other. And what I find most hopeful about the documentary is it features 9 different stories about 9 different communities, but every one of those stories I could find in my own community and you could find in yours. And it's not to ignore the real fissures that we have in our country, but I think it is to remind us that the deeper connection that we had to each other is stronger than these divisions that we showcase. It's just a lovely, beautiful, soul feeding reminder of what is great about living in this country.
And that's not a message we hear often lately.
It's
So,
not.
it, where can people watch that?
So if it's being released in certain theaters this week, and you can go to the antidotefilm.com and find ways to stream it. I think they'll be announcing in a couple of weeks a major streaming service that it will be released on in December. But in the meantime, they're trying to support theaters, and you can go on their website and find theaters where you can buy a ticket and stream it in your house. And it's worth streaming. It is, like I said, it's just uh, it speaks to the best of who we are. And right now, I think we can focus on the hate that's obviously here, but the solution to that is to connect ourselves and to sew ourselves together in kindness, love, decency, and respect. And that's what the film showcases. And I'm honored that Amarillo College is a part of it.
Awesome. Well, I had to bring that one up, not as again, this isn't a PR pitch, but y'all really should go check out that
It's
film.
amazing.
Well, thank you, Russell, so much for spending time with me. Again, I hope some of these LA sun rays can head your way magically. Such an honor and a treat to get to talk with you and to feature you in the book. Y'all definitely make sure to go and connect with Russell to get that realness and that goodness. Again, I really appreciate you, Russell, for your time.
My privilege and the realness and goodness you've captured in this book. So thank you for writing it. We need it.
All right, that is another week of our book club made for all digital. People asked, "Oh, are you going on a book tour?" And this is my book tour. And it's honestly what I would absolutely want to do on a book tour anyway, is to bring along friends and bring along really good human beings that tell the real stories of life and leadership, and especially with this college president, Russell, talking about love and caring and decency. So I hope you are leaving this live stream or recording a little bit more uplifted. I know I am. And because of the US election next week, we're going to be taking a week off so everyone could focus all their attention on voting or just caring for yourselves and others. And then we'll be back a week after. So in 2 weeks, I'm bringing on Sumi Pendekar. She's another feature of the book. She has worked on college campuses for dozens of years and now is a diversity and equity consultant. I'm excited to have Sumi on. So thanks y'all for joining today. Please do take care, and we will see you in a couple weeks.